Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of Expertise is Overrated, the podcast that takes the time to answer the questions you didn't know you didn't want the answers to. I'm Sean.
And I'm Vib, and neither of us has any clue what we're talking about. Before we get into the episode, let's award the much vaunted Expertise is Overrated Tinfoil Award.
As a reminder, this is an award that we will be giving out at the start of every episode to the person who had the most ridiculous point in last week's episode.
Now, I think in an Expertise is Overrated first, Tinfoil this week goes to absolutely nobody, because we analysed the video game industry in our last episode, and we did it, I think it's fair to say, very expertly. And I don't think either one of us said anything, too stupid.
No, I don't think so. I think we were calm, collected, considered, and most importantly, correct.
100% correct, yeah. But I mean, we usually are. We just throw in the tinfoil to seem human.
No, absolutely. I think
that's going to come back to haunt us, that one, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like either of us has ever argued in favour of eugenics or anything like that. Human, that's what we are.
What, like calling Grindelwald a good person and calling the other person morally bankrupt?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Things like that never happen on this show.
No, not at all. But no,
Speaking of things that happen on this show, do we have any feedback this week?
Do we ever? So, friend of the show and frequent feedbacker, giver of feedback, Ellie, absolutely unloaded on our Harry Potter episode. It was...
Oh dear.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're going to have to...
Unloaded because she thought that it was great and we were right about everything?
No. She was angry with you.
Oh, no.
She was angry with you for the points that you made. Not only, though, was she angry with you, she was angry with me for not essentially taking you to task properly. I'm going to just... We don't have time to go through all of the feedback that we received from Ellie because that's an episode in itself, and I think it's, in fact, we're going to have Ellie on, I think.
I think so.
To deal with
she
this.
Can have a proper discussion about all this. Because before even hearing her feedback, I'm assuming she's wrong. So,
yeah, I mean, what have I got? This is so frustrating. Viv is wrong, and you are stupid. You shouldn't be willing to park the one-on-one because if two people have guns, but one person has to yell "bang" first, who's going to win? Spellcasting is the same principle. Now, even I think that's wrong. But that's
100% dreadfully wrong.
That's sort of the flavour that we got from
also, is she implying that you don't need to squeeze triggers?
I don't know. I think she was too angry to be entirely coherent.
I think she should come on the show. We'll have a talk. On that note as well, I got some feedback from a friend of mine about the Harry Potter episode. I guess that's one that people objected to a lot. And she disagreed with us for slamming Muggle and wizard marriages, making the point that McGonagall married a Muggle man, and she is a very good person. And frankly, I found that kind of hard to argue with, because that's very true.
Is that in the only canon of Harry Potter, which is the 7 published books?
That's a very good question.
Because if it's on Pottermore,
this could be
or worse, in The Cursed Child, I'm not fucking having it.
That's fair. That's entirely fair. I do think that when we got to the sort of calling wizards quite sinister for marrying muggles, perhaps we'd become a bit disheartened at the whole discussion we were having. So maybe that's an element.
I think the problem there might be that I was bringing my own pre-existing issues with the wizarding world to the table.
Yes, and there were many.
I have real problems with them. So,
I mean, and part of as a sort of self-analysis of that episode, there was a lot of, well, they hide because gun beats stick, and then we circled around eventually to me saying, well, they hide because gun beats stick. And for some reason, we didn't pick up on the fact that we'd sort of circled around back to this. So it's a great episode, I'm not going to lie.
I think it's quite quintessentially Expertise is Overrated, as is the one that inspired this coming episode. Just a couple of other things on my end. So we mentioned last week that we'd finally convinced my wife to listen to some of our episodes. And we had a great pronouncement this evening before sitting down to record. And I'm quoting
No.
I'm trying to work out if I'd like Vib if I met him. And sad to say, right now, the jury is still out.
Oh, no. Well, that's pretty damning.
I think we can call the jury in. I think we can answer that one for you.
If she doesn't yet know that she needs to dislike me when she meets me, then I guess I'm doing something right or wrong. You decide.
No, absolutely. That's a terrifying thought, actually, if you and she ever were to meet. Let's just make sure that never happens. And just very, very quickly, and lastly, we've had some suggestions for topics that listeners would like us to cover. And sure, I mean, we love to hear what you'd like to hear us talk about. We can't guarantee to do everything, but we're more than willing to give things a shot. I think the
absolutely
top of the list at the moment is Discworld, which I'm sure there's plenty to unpack there, but I don't think you've not read any Discworld, have you?
No, none at all.
Okay, so it will be get you to read Discworld and then talk about it.
It's on my list of many, many things to read and play and watch. And the thing about that list is it only ever gets longer. The more you read and watch and play, the list still just gets longer and longer.
Well, part of your problem is obviously you can't read, as evidenced by all the crap that you come out with on this show. So
Indeed. I mean, imagine how... I mean, they're one-sided now with me just owning you in every episode. Imagine if I could read. It'd be slaughter every Monday.
Jesus, it's like you live in a different world.
I really do.
So what are we talking about today? This is your topic, as far as I'm concerned, because I don't know where we're going.
Oh, you're shunting this one on me, are you? Because it's too complicated.
100%. This is too complicated for my small lizard brain.
I mean, today I think we should talk about, amongst other things, immortality. Now, we've talked immortality before, with regards to the Dresden Files on that particular occasion, and frankly confused the hell out of us. So it's I guess not unsurprising that we're back here. Well, not surprising that we're back here.
We're talking a simpler immortality this time. Obviously, Dresden Files was too big and too difficult and too confusing for us. So what we've done here is we've calmed ourselves down. We're going easier.
We are going easier because we're not necessarily going to think about immortality and what it means to be immortal.
Oh, good.
But we're going to essentially talk about how fucked up it is when you start looking at family trees of a universe that includes both immortals and mortals.
Oh, no.
And of course, there's only one universe where that's particularly apt, and that would be the universe that old JRR Tolkien created for us.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. Here we are. Lord of the Rings, The Silmarillion, The Hobbit, you name it. Many, many, many characters in those books. Only very few of which are ever mentioned, really. But amazingly, someone's gone through and worked out virtually the family tree of everyone in the Tolkienarium. It's amazing, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you should go and check them out at notrproject.com. It's really quite fascinating, just looking at the family tree. It's ludicrous. Fair warning, I think there will be confusion during this episode.
I've got it open now, and firstly, this is a phenomenal tool for anyone who's trying to get their head around the Silmarillion. I genuinely, I can't praise this enough. This is quite clearly a labor of mad, feverish love. But no, that's really quite something.
It really is. I mean, it's got just sort of scrolling through it now. You know, there's obviously the big family trees that you might talk about. You know, your Finways, your Fingolfins, etc. But then there's also, Beorn's just there somewhere. Even though all that we know about him is that he had a son called Grimbeorn. Didn't even know who his wife was, if there even was a wife.
The Master
orc
of
family trees.
Wait, I don't think I want orc family trees.
They're not really much in terms of trees. They're just sort of lists of orc names. And we've even got Bert, Tom, and Bill. Amazing.
The
three
ponies.
trolls.
Oh no, the trolls.
The three trolls from The Hobbit, yeah.
Oh no,
Bill the Pony. What an excellent reference that is.
I found the orcs. They're just named orcs. But no, you do have Azog and Bolg, and a really unpleasant line connecting Azog and Bolg, implying parentage. I just really don't want to think about that at all. So I'm not going to. I'm just going to move on. The other thing that this really hammers home to me before we dive into it, is I've read The Hobbit several times, and I've read The Lord of the Rings more times, and yeah. I've read I've even read the Silmarillion, I think 2.5 times, and there are just there are so many people named on this that I just have never heard of.
It's quite remarkable, isn't it? Because I'm in the same boat. I've read the Lord of the Rings arguably too many times.
Yeah.
And I've also read the Silmarillion arguably too many times. I've even read some of the unfinished tales and some of what effectively are just appendices.
Yeah.
And I'm exactly with you. There's names that I have never before seen, which is just quite something, really. I mean, the first one, the sort of top left of this page, is an elf called Rumil, which kind of rings a faint bell. Maybe it could just be me, I don't know, pretending. It's just known as an elf sage of Valinor. I mean, what on earth? Where do you find this?
Okay, this is anyway. So we're nerding out way too hard here.
Yeah, it bodes well for the rest of this episode.
But no, so where did you want to go with this, other than spend a lot of time gazing at family trees? Because we can do that in our spare time.
Well, I mean, some will argue that I have tricked you into this, because the main family tree I think we should be discussing is that of a certain man named Aragorn.
But I've done that already.
Whom you so unkindly, unjustly, and wrongly accused of not having a claim to the throne of Gondor in episode 2.
Say he had no. Well, no, I did say he had no claim.
That word for word, he has no claim.
It's actually the whole premise of that episode. I wasn't wrong,
because
but
you were wrong, and because I'm still very angry about that whole episode. I've made you do this. We're now going to look at Aragorn's family tree.
Oh, good.
And work out just how wrong you are.
Sorry, just before you do that, have you seen the map, the interactive map of Middle-earth?
I have. It's amazing, isn't it?
That's so impressive.
You really have just gone full nerded out, haven't you?
I'm wondering if I can get a printout of this. Sorry. You were saying we want to talk about Aragorn's family tree. Okay, but I covered this, right? Aragorn is descended from Elros, and that's why he's so impressive. That's not it? Where do we want to go with this?
It's a great question. Where do we want to go with this? I think the first things first is that based on all this, that family tree is by far and away the longest, I think, in this whole saga.
But that was always the point, wasn't it? Because Aragorn needs to have the most fleshed out family tree because his heritage is so important to the overall story.
Absolutely. But that's why it's also interesting that his family tree is one of very few here that has a bunch of question marks in it.
Yeah, no, I noticed that. That's really interesting.
So you're right, because I think that's exactly it. They wanted it to sort of be fleshed out, and towards the top of his line, they're really. I think they were quite clear that there was a bunch of people between Elendil and another named forefather, Valandil.
Yes, that's Valandil, child of Silmarion and Elatan. And Silmarion is the daughter of the King of Númenor, Tar Elendil.
Exactly. Which you rightly pointed out was part of the problem to Aragorn's claim, because you're sexist like that. I'm
not sexist. The Númenorians were. I can't believe you've just
that's
done
fair.
that.
That's fair. No, but Aragorn. So he comes at the end of a very long line, and so his father Arathorn, I think, is a name that people will have heard.
Yes.
It was Dreesums of Aragorn, son of Arathorn.
Uh-huh.
I'm a big badass. And then you have to go up and up and up and up and up and up and up to get to another name that we probably are familiar with, which is Isildur. He is Isildur's heir.
Yes.
The problem is Aragorn is 39 generations down from him.
I'm getting angry now because I said all this, but no, he is. He's a long way from Isildur.
Well, and I think what you didn't mention at that point is that Isildur himself is already 24 generations away from Elros.
No, I didn't make that point.
Because your point was absolutely fair. Is that he's so far removed from Isildur. Although looking at the line, it is virtually all male descendants, which is quite something. And of course, you did also touch on Isildur's brother Anarion, the king of Arnor, king of Gondor.
Other way around, that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I always mix those up, annoyingly.
It would make sense for Anarion to be king of Arnor, but he's not.
It would, yeah. But he's king of Gondor. And he also has many, many, many descendants. One of whom marries back into Isildur's line, which is great.
Yes.
Quite a common theme amongst Tolkien's
I feel like we're going to come onto this in far more depth when we get closer to the top of this tree.
Yeah, it's quite something, isn't it? And the interesting thing as well, because obviously you were making a case for maybe the stewards should rule because they have been. Why not? Gondor needs no king. And of course, we can look at Denethor and Faramir and Boromir's family tree, and they can trace it back to some pretty distinct lineage as well. Seeing the likes of Húrin and
different Húrin, though, isn't it?
But there are different Barahirs and Húrins, and it's really very confusing at that point.
So, I guess my theory there would be Húrin. Well, there's two. There's the in-universe and there's the out-of-universe explanation, I think. Right. So the in-universe explanation is that Húrin and Barahir and Túrin, there's a Túrin in here as well, are just... Ecthelion is in here. They're just famous people, right?
I think they were just given names of famous...
Yes, no, sorry. What I mean is the original Húrin, right, of the Children of Húrin fame.
Yeah.
Or the original Túrin, I can never get his post-nomial right, Turambar,
I think, yeah.
Túrin Turambar is a famous person. Ecthelion of the Fountain, Lord of Gondolin, is a famous person. And so the stewards, when Barahir as well is famous, and so the stewards, the line of stewards, when naming their children, were just using famous names.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It's a bit like calling your kid Arthur or Charlemagne. That well-known
name.
Name.
You either name your kid Arthur after Arthur Weasley, or you go straight for Charlemagne. Amazing. No, but I mean, it's true as well of the daughters, which is in many ways unusual in the Tolkien verse. But in that line, there's always also a Morwen, who of course was Húrin's wife. So there's definitely reusage of a lot of these names, which, while I understand the reasoning for it, does make things incredibly complicated after a while. Especially the argument of steward versus king, and then you look in the phone trees and they sound like they should be related, but they're not really.
So when we say steward, we mean the line of Túrin. No, that's not right.
Except it is. maybe that's the whole point that they were trying to make. No, but so coming back to Aragorn.
Yes.
So yes, obviously very far removed, but it's a very long, straight line. And the reason I say it like that is because if we look at Aragorn's wife, Arwen,
I was going to say, isn't that a problem?
It's a massive problem, because literally to get from Arwen to her father Elrond and mother Celebrian, it's just a big, long line, because Elrond is Elros's brother, who you've just said is, what, 50-something? 63 generations away from Aragorn, whereas Aragorn's wife is one generation away from that exact tier.
It's really quite funny, actually.
It's it's daft, is what it is.
But I guess that's
just really confusing.
In a way, it's sort of not a problem, right? Because you've got so much. I'm going to be generous to the Númenóreans here, which is not something I often do, and assume that they've introduced sort of enough genetic diversity just by that really long line of people that you have to go down. That's line of 63 people.
That is true.
Except if the marriage of Arvedwi and Firiel is anything to go by, they're not really that much genetic diversity. They're pretty. I mean,
they're actually quite far apart as well.
Yeah, they're cousins in
many ways removed. Yeah, like quite something.
But this does.
But no, it is just funny because Elrond is Aragorn's. I think I tried to work it out. Is great times 63 uncle.
Yes,
which is not a title that you very often come across in real life.
Which I think makes Arwen his cousin 63 times removed.
Quite possibly, yeah.
I used to know this, the difference between a second cousin and a cousin once removed.
Yeah, because she could also just be his 63rd cousin.
One is sideways and one is up, and I can't remember what it is.
I think removed must be going up.
Yeah, because
I think your second cousin is your cousin's son.
If it's a second cousin, you share a great grandparent. As opposed to
this always confuses me as well.
Anyway, they're probably not too related, but it's a bit icky because. And this comes back to your point of the weirdness of introducing immortality. It's not really a problem, except Elrond remembers Elros.
Yes.
That's where it's weird and icky, I think. It's not so much that they're related, because they're probably not any more related than, like, most people in the Middle Ages getting married.
I mean, 63 generations, or I guess 65... working it backwards that way. It's actually quite a lot. You know, isn't the rule of thumb is that you actually just go up 8 generations and you'll find that you'll just relate to everyone. You'll find a relative somewhere. 7 degrees of separation, right? Is it?
I'm trying to remember this now because I've done that 23andMe, as has my wife, so I can actually tell you how much closure they give you as to how related you are.
I really hope that you're not siblings or something.
No, we're not siblings, obviously.
That'd be such a poor twist, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it wouldn't be ideal. But no, they give you. I think they say you're not likely to have anything. I think 8 generations sounds about right.
Yeah, at which point I think in terms of genetics, it's so. It's so far removed anyway. It's irrelevant. So in many ways, for Aragorn's son's claim, it's great, right? Because he's reintroduced some fresh, properly Elros adjacent genes into the mix, which is really something. Which I think, to be fair to you, is a point that you made at the end of your hot take as well. That Eldarion is just an
Eldarion is the best case for Aragorn's kingship.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's essentially we're reintroducing fresh blood into the line, but also it's not that fresh because really, what we all really really like is our direct lineal descent from Erendil, who might have been one of the greatest beings to ever exist.
Erendil, yeah, and his wife was something as well, yeah. Elwing. Great name too, I think.
Elwing. Yeah, given that Arundel ended up in a flying boat,
I know.
Elwing, his wife.
It's a bit on the nose. But of course, famously, yeah. What's special about Arundel is that he was obviously the half elven, and as is Elwing.
As is Elwing, yes.
Sort of.
Well,
this is where it gets really weird, genetically speaking, right?
To Baron-ish, aren't they?
Where Arundel is, not Baron directly, but Baron's forefathers.
So Arundel.
So Arendel's parents were Idril and Tuor.
Tuor is a man.
Fame. Yeah, because Tuor is Huor's son, and they feature quite heavily in Huor. They feature quite heavily in the Silmarillion.
Yes,
and I mean Huor's line goes up, through Hador and all those people. But it's Huor's wife Rian, whose father is Baron's father, Barahir's brother.
Baron's father.
If you've managed to keep up with that, I applaud you, because I think I lost track and I was saying it.
Yes.
So Baron's father is related to someone in Erendel's line. So Barahir, of the Ring of Barahir. His brother
Barahir's
marries
brother.
into Huor's line.
So very, very loosely, Tuor and Baron are cousins.
Tuor and Baron are, somewhat cousins. Yeah.
With a couple of numbers removed.
Exactly. And then obviously Baron and Luthien's daughter. Dior is a woman, right?
Dior is a woman.
Because the name gets used for both. And Nimloth, the other person in that marriage, is equally a name that could apply to both. I'm pretty sure Dior was a
daughter.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was their daughter. And she marries Nimloth, and their daughter Elwing marries Erendil. So, yeah. So Baron's lines cross again there with him being Tuor's cousin a few times removed, marrying back into that family. So,
because that's not at all weird.
No, not at all. But where I think it gets really strange is the genetics of it all, as you mentioned, because you said Elrond was there when Elros was alive. So it's a little weird, but I'm not necessarily convinced it is, because, the half-elven seem to make a choice, right, that makes them immortal elves, or mortal if very long-lived men.
That was a choice. Okay, so yes, that was a choice that was offered to all the half-elven people at the end of the First Age, I think. But
probably.
Essentially, the only people for whom that choice really matters are Elrond and Elrond. And I'm not.
And also Arwen, she gets to choose too, which is weird because she was born in the Third Age.
Is that,
and as Elrohir and Elladan, which is
that a film only creation, or is that in the books?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. The thing I know about Elladan and Elrohir is I think it is mentioned that they have not made their choice. And I want to say that's in a book, one of the books. I couldn't possibly tell you.
It may well be.
An appendix, I think, somewhere in Return of the King. But that is a fair point. I don't know if Arwen's choice is a film-only creation.
Because when she says, I choose a mortal life...
But, I mean, she is, at the time of meeting Aragorn, she is, 2,000 and something years old.
Which is a bit
By the time of Aragorn's birth, rather, yeah. She's 2,500 years old when Aragorn... Or 2,700 years old when Aragorn is born. So she's definitely not mortal at that point, and she definitely dies when Aragorn dies. So
not to put too fine a point on it, that's like me marrying
your cousin 62 times a
month.
Something like that, yeah.
I'm a few years out, but it's within the margin of error. That's weird.
But I mean, you would if you could, right? I mean, not so much you, because you're married, and I think that wouldn't end well for you. But me,
I don't know. I reckon I could get a pass for Cleopatra.
I guess
I'm
Caesar
sorry.
would
I
be on
know you're
offer there as
listening to
well.
this, and I apologise.
Well, I mean, if Caesar's going or Mark Antony,
Yeah, no, fair.
Well.
Tell you what, we'll do a deal.
No, so I think that there is it always kind of struck me as though you get to choose what particular set of genetics you favor. So then talking about being related in a genetic sense gets really murky as far as I'm concerned. Like, how related were Elrond and Elros after they both chose to be who they wanted to be? Not to mention as well,
they're
obviously,
still brothers though. Right?
Yeah,
Okay, you can draw a distinction with Arwen, maybe, because she embodies. I think it's meant to be. It's quite heavily implied she takes after her mother, who is Galadriel's daughter,
Galadriel,
which we're going to need to come on to.
yeah, we will, because that's incredibly important.
Yeah.
But in fact, you're right. They're still brothers. And they've got elven blood in them, and not just any elven blood. I mean,
no, not just any elf. But
Idril is Turgon's daughter. Turgon is obviously Fingolfin's son, which is
obviously.
And of course, Beren and Luthien, the most famous couple of all time, arguably in the Tolkienarium, their mother was Luthien's mother. Luthien's mother was Melian, who's a Maya. So there's angelic blood in there as well,
or whatever Maya are. But
whatever Maya are. Yeah.
Yeah. So Melian, the Maya, semi-pseudo angelic adjacent, whatever you want to call them, Maya. I think they're basically angels. I think that's fair.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because the Valar are often described as gods, although I suppose maybe a more accurate way of looking at them is archangels.
Yeah, I think so. And then the Maya are lesser angels.
Yeah, because it's weird to talk about gods when there is one clearly defined god.
Eru,
yeah.
But so not only do you have Melian, you've also got Thingol or Elwë.
Yes.
Who is a first
King of Doriath. Yeah.
King of Doriath. He also saw the trees. He's listed as a Sindar, but I don't think that's actually right, because wasn't he one of the four?
He's always been a really funny one for me, because I can't ever remember what his deal is. But you're right. I think he saw the light of the trees and then just went back and.
So I think he saw the light of the trees with Olwë, Finwë, and Ingwë, who we're going to need to come back to. But he then returned to...
And Elmo as well, I think.
I don't think Elmo did. He might have done. But
no, I don't think he did actually, no. So you're right.
The ones that I remember all have the
Finwë
E with the umlaut.
Yeah.
Right, because Thingol becomes Thingol when he stays in Doriath.
Yeah.
Becomes Grey Mantle. That's Thingol. But before then, he is Elwë, brother to Olwë and Elmo, and kin to Ingwë and Finwë.
Yeah, because Olwë's daughter Eowyn marries Finarfin, who is obviously Finwë's son. And this will be a theme that I think will become quite familiar to people.
Someone's daughter, someone marries someone. Yeah,
something Finwë eventually.
but that means as well, right? That because the fact that you saw the light of the trees before the sun and moon is a big deal.
It's huge, yeah.
Right. That's why Galadriel is such a big deal in the Third Age, because she's the last elf left on, she is the last elf left in Middle-earth who saw the light of the trees, isn't she? Because the light of the trees is meant to be in her eyes.
Yes. Well, there is a case to be made for a certain Maglor. who I imagine saw the light of the trees. I don't actually know if he did. He must have
Did
done.
the sons of Fëanor see the tree? I think they did.
I think they did, right? Because that's how all the shit started with Fëanor doing Fëanor things. And of course, Maglor is supposedly... Well, we never see him die, unlike all his brothers, and he just sort of wanders the shores of Middle-earth.
Yeah, that's a claim.
Yeah, but there's no recorded death for him.
Okay.
Which, yeah.
But we don't
in and
know
of itself
this.
Interesting.
That is because all of the other sons of Fëanor have their deaths are important.
Yeah, and technically there is still the oath.
But does Maglor repent the oath?
He sort of does. Yeah, he sort of does. Because so many heinous things have happened to his family, and then because he's involved in virtually all the kinslayings.
He's like, maybe we shouldn't have done
included.
all of those things that were awful.
But yeah, no, you're right. So Gladriel is so powerful because she is.
Yeah, that's why she is the one who throws down the fortress of the Necromancer, for example.
Yeah. But she never becomes High King or High Queen, I suppose, of the Noldor, which is kind of insulting. Yeah, I mean, it goes through the line of Vangrod, but the High Kingship is such a mess.
But the High Kingship, I've always seen described as the Noldor, the male Noldor who can claim closest descent to Finwë.
Yeah, it's just archaic, isn't it? The fact it has to be the male. Because Galadriel is so much closer than any of them now.
But that is also the thing, because the assertion, I think, was meant to be that it should go to Elrond after Gil-galad dies.
I think he's one of the people who would have the best claim, yeah. But I think
I was looking into this
after sort of died, yeah.
Well, I was looking into this after our last episode, and you're right, it died, but it's meant to be. Everyone who was High King of the Noldor suffered a really shitty end.
Yeah.
Basically.
But I think there is a suggestion that the High Kingship of the Noldor just went back to, I don't know, one of the proper firstborn, because all the Noldor who survived went back to the west.
And
died.
Who is it? Finarfin who never left.
He's the one who never left. Yeah,
so it's probably him in Valinor. Or in Aman. It's probably Finarfin who is High King.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be Finwë because he. I think by the end of by the Fourth Age and stuff, isn't he back supposedly? So
this is where immortality gets really, really, really confusing.
Yeah,
because
they get to die and still live on.
they're actually immortal. So you could go to Valinor if you're an elf and chat to Finwë.
Yep.
And
Fëanor.
Or Fëanor.
If Mandos decides that letting him out is a good idea.
I'm fairly sure Fëanor is never getting out. you could talk tactics with Gil-galad. You could, make.
Yeah, but why would you if you can just go and chat to Aula,
But it is just so confusing. Make things with Celebrimbor.
Yeah. How fucked up is that?
Yeah. Have a word with him about the rings that he made.
Yeah. Hey, that's quite the story that you caused.
Do you have any
no, it's and you're absolutely right. And it's so difficult to comprehend. And I think in the books, the most famous and obvious example of that where it got confusing, and it took me a long time to figure out if this person was actually the same, which was Glorfindel, right?
But Glorfindel is also a special case. I think that the best example of it in the books, come on to Glorfindel, because he's a good example, but I think he's a special case.
He's a very special case, yeah.
At the Council of Elrond, when Elrond is giving the description of the Last Alliance and the battle and the siege of Barad-dûr, and he says something along the lines of I was there, or something. It's Elrond and it's Tolkien, so it's better written than that. And Frodo just loses his shit a little bit and is like, but that was thousands of years ago. And Elrond just looks at him and goes, you have no idea who I am. I was Gil-galad's herald, or I think I herald of Gil-galad and marched beside him. But Erendil was my sire, born in the First Age. I have seen, and he just has this really long speech about essentially how great he is, which is quite funny. But no, I think that was the one that really hammered it home for me. I've seen many.
But much like you said that Galadriel has the light of the trees in her eyes, like Glorfindel, even though I'm not sure he does, but because he is such he's a First Age elf, right?
So Glorfindel is a First Age elf. He's a prince of Gondolin, or a lord of Gondolin, but he's not like that much of a big deal until he kills a Balrog, which is enormous because they're Maya. But then he is like sent back from Valinor sent from the west back to Middle Earth in a similar fashion to the Istari.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, that's where a lot of his powers...
It's specifically a Gandalf the Grey to the Gandalf the White type thing, isn't it?
It is, but I think...
Because Glorfindel dies, goes to the halls of Mandos, but then for some reason it's very much suggested that Eru sort of chats to him, is like, no, mate, you got to go back. And then he goes back.
Yeah, but you're right, it's really strange, because he apparently like receives a power-up when he returns.
And then never does anything.
Well, he puts the 9 to flight.
Yeah,
but no, you are right. But it's almost like he's there just to bro it up with Elrond.
Yeah, maybe it's just because Elrond needs company, and it's insane, isn't it? Because I think Glorfindel is sort of described as almost kind of hard to look at because he's just that.
I think you're
impressive.
Right.
It's a bit like the Emperor of Mankind in 40k. Like you just can't help but be in awe of this guy.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. He is described like that, and it is strange.
And it is a bit like Galadriel as well, because people are very much in awe of her. And just to come back to Galadriel, because we've said obviously she's Finarfin's daughter, which is ridiculous. But true to form, her husband Celeborn is Elmo's grandson.
Yeah.
And of course, we know that Elmo is Finarfin's wife's uncle. So it has to be. Galadriel and Celeborn are also cousins of some kind.
They're too close.
Yeah, they're like second cousins or cousins once removed. If we could work out how it is, twice removed. Yeah,
it has to be the case that elvish genetics in Middle-earth are just different. It has to be.
There's got to be something. I mean, because ultimately, right, 144, I think, is spawned. That's not very many.
Is that the number of firstborn?
I believe so. Yeah. Which when I found that number the other day, I was surprised because I genuinely thought it was way fewer than that.
No, I sort of thought it was like 7.
Yeah, I know. But I think essentially that the design of the elves, because obviously the elves and the men were designed by Eru himself, right? That's the whole reason.
Yes,
the Valar
they are
come
the
to the world. Exactly. So I think that he would have probably had some foresight and thought, well, I can't make the genetics such that marrying people who share a very similar genetic makeup to you will eventually cause problems. So I suspect the genetics just works very differently in this universe.
It has to, but it still just baffles me to look at.
Oh, it's absolutely baffling. It really is.
When your genetic line is almost
Elrond. Actually, that's not a bad way of looking at it. Yeah, yeah, and this is where it just because with the elves alone, it's actually not too bad. Yeah, they're all a bit close to home in terms of being cousins and whatnot. But it is when we get to Beren and Luthien, when we get to Idril and Tuor, when we get to Erendil and Elwing.
I guess the other way to look at it, though,
becomes a mess.
Right, so Galadriel is a First Age elf. Celeborn fairly sure is a first age elf. Right? If he's always grandson, he's almost certainly a first age elf as well. Although probably Sindar, thinking it
Celeborn,
through.
I think, is Sindar, yeah.
But like they're married for thousands of years.
Oh yeah.
Like 10 potentially, depending on whether Celeborn was born before the trees or not before the trees, before the sun and moon. Tens of thousands of years, potentially. They have one child.
Yeah. Who suffers a really horrible fate as well.
Yeah, doesn't bear thinking about it.
But I mean, they've got time, I suppose, right? It's not like they couldn't ever have any more children.
No, but I wonder. I wonder if Feanor is the elf that we know of to have had the most children. I think.
Yes,
right, because he has seven sons.
Is quite a lot, yeah.
Compared with, I mean, most of them seem to be having one or two. Elrond is pretty special by having three.
Well, actually, Finwë himself has 5.
4. Finwë.
Yeah, he's got Feanor in his first marriage, and then 4 in the second marriage.
He has 4, yeah. Finarfin also has 4, as does Fingolfin. To be fair to them, actually. Okay, but 7 is still a huge number. So I wonder if there's something there where, like, they just don't breed very much. Partly because they don't have to, because they're never going to die. So you don't have to worry about like prolonging.
Yeah, exactly.
Or anything.
That's sort of. That seems to be the implied thing about that, right? They just don't really have to procreate because they just live forever, and they live in the fact they live in the knowledge of the fact that when they die, they can't just come back. So yeah, it puts a whole different spin on things. But this is why when it comes to whenever men get involved, it's
when it gets messy.
I've also just seen that, talking of Galadriel and Celeborn. So Celeborn's parents had another child who happens to be a parent of Nimloth and Maris Dior, who obviously are Elwing's parents. So, my goodness. Eärendil and Elwing have got some serious pedigree.
And some seriously, like, overlapping ancestry.
Oh, it gets so very bad, doesn't it? It gets so very bad. Beren's, like, parents. That whole tree of men is ridiculous.
This was something I meant to look up, though. So, if you go to... This is my monomyth. No one has ever told an original story theory. But if you look at Genesis, for example...
Sure.
All of humankind is essentially descended from 2 people.
Yes.
Although how that quite works, I'm not entirely sure, because Adam and Eve didn't have a daughter. So who does Cain...
You sure you want to follow that logic through?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you. But then obviously later in Genesis, the world is flooded and only Noah and his family survive, which I think is...
Yes, yeah.
3 Noah and his 3 sons and their wives, I think. So that's not a lot of people to repopulate the Earth.
Nope.
With either.
But even, I mean, if we take a step out of fiction and talk about real life science, there's the concept of African Eve, right? This sort of common ancestor that Europeans can trace their lineage back to. This woman from Africa from however long ago, a very long time ago. And I think she had 7 daughters that we can sort of trace things back to. So, I mean, it kind of is, there is a reality to it, right? I mean, there's 8 billion people now.
Yeah.
There definitely weren't 8 billion when we started. So
the point is those 8 billion people are all descended from one of 7 people.
Yeah, I don't know, because I think that very specifically
or Europeans
apply to Europeans. Yeah, I don't know how that translates to other peoples in Africa and other people in like Asia.
But there's all sorts of things. If your timeline starts to get big enough, everything goes weird. Can't we trace something like 80% of sort of everyone who lives east of the Urals has Genghis Khan somewhere in their ancestry?
Yeah.
Everyone who lives in Western Europe can probably trace their lineage some way to get to Charlemagne, because you go back far
but
enough.
that's just because they were top shaggers.
I think that's probably true of Genghis Khan. I'm not sure it's quite the point I was making, though.
No, I know what you mean, though. I know what you mean. No, let's just go back to what we were talking about.
Back to Aragorn, top shagger.
Back to Aragorn. And I think the point that I wanted to mention is you really don't get very far away from either Fingolfin, Finarfin, and by extension Finwë, and by extension Ingwe, the High King of all the elves, essentially.
Yeah,
which is kind of nuts. I mean, if we work it out, Arwen, right, the woman who marries Aragorn, all those years later in the third/fourth age, it's her father's mother's father's father is Fingolfin. So that's crazy.
and Ingwe is Fingolfin's uncle.
Yes.
It's assumed because Indis is assumed to be his sister.
To be Ingwe's sister, yeah. Fingolfin's uncle, yeah, you're right, yeah.
What I have here is that she was the child of a sister of Ingwe. I've definitely read that she was Ingwe's sister.
I've definitely read that she was a sister, yeah. I don't know. But the point being that Eldarion, the king of Gondor and Arnor in the Fourth Age, is more or less just like a grandchild of Finwë. It's mental.
And putting all these greats in there doesn't really make sense when, okay, he's in Valinor, but Finwë's walking around. Like, don't you imagine, just being a bit silly now, but like, he's going to want to go to Eldarion's birthday party and stuff.
Well, yeah. When we say Finwë's alive, it's kind of tricky, isn't it? Because technically he died. He actually only lived to be about 400 and something.
I think that these are all... I don't trust any of these dates because they don't account for the time before the trees. I don't think. And we know that the firstborn were born before the trees. So that's why I said, like, they could be tens of thousands of years old, because if you're the very, very start of the Silmarillion, time is so abstract.
It really is, yeah.
The spring of Middle Earth is such an undefined period of time through which Finwë and Ingwe and Olwë and Thingol and Elmo lived.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Before they were found as well.
Before they were found, exactly. We don't know anything about that. Sorry, I've just seen that there's an Ent called Celeborn, and that's really funny.
Yeah, that is quite funny, isn't it? And Finwë, I'm pretty sure I have read that he left the halls of Mandos.
I think that sounds right.
And Finarfin, as you said, is obviously still very much just alive and well in the West. So he's ancient. So that's the really mental thing about these family trees, is that Aragorn, it's such a familiar concept for us, right? He's got many, many, many ancestors who are all, heirs of one description or another, and it makes a lot of sense. And then you get closer to Elros, and the family tree kind of explodes, and it's all mental. And then that guy marries Arwen, who just in a few hops is all the way back to the
I think that's what I was really struggling with when we spoke about this last time. Like, I can get the Lost King trope, right? Aragorn is the last heir of a broken line who can trace his lineage all the way back to Elendil the Tall, this mythical figure who forged 2 kingdoms and then died vanquishing the Dark Lord. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Well, I have quite a lot of a problem with that, as I discussed, but like, as a trope, that's okay. Where I get really confused by it is you then just introduce Arwen, who's like, I was there. I remember, yeah, no bother.
Exactly, yeah.
My dad remembers the first age. Remember that mythical time that we talk about? It's like in the Wheel of Time, right? When the Forsaken are talking about the Age of Legends, and they're like, "Oh, we were there. It was like this. It was like that." It's like that essentially. It's the first age is this. The power level is off the charts. There's werewolves. There's dragons the size of mountains. There's boats that fly through the air. Like, it's just insane. And Elrond's like, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, then this is it's great, right? Because if
that's my dad up there in the stars. What?
And it's the scene in the extended edition of the Two Towers, right, where Aragorn talks to Eowyn and just casually mentions that he, served with Thengel, I think it is, right?
Yeah, you were at the war with Thengel, my grandfather.
Yeah, and Eowyn's like, what? What do you mean? That was ages ago. And Aragorn's like, yeah, I'm 80 something. And Eowyn's just absolutely amazed. It's like, oh my god, how? And then to scale that up to the conversations Aragorn must have with his wife and Elrond, who are just sort of there. But then on top of that,
Elrond's bedtime stories must be great.
But imagine if Elrond chatted to his mother-in-law Galadriel, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I remember a time before the moon and the sun. I remember a time before men existed." And then Elrond's like, "Oh yeah."
It's almost yeah. I remember the time before time.
Exactly.
Oh, and by the way, I've chatted with you know that Elbereth, the Valar that you all essentially pray to. I've chatted to her.
Yeah, I know Manwë.
Yeah,
what of it?
Manwë, he's turns out he's a bit of a dick. Like, he's just not very interesting. It's mental.
A bit rude, that.
Yeah, sorry. I take that back. That's a bit rude.
Family dinners must be just a car crash.
I know. I just bamboozling. Absolutely bamboozling.
It is. So I think the other things I just briefly wanted to mention. I mean, we've talked about Aragorn, and you talked about his claim and how weird it was, and you did mention that he was. I mean, Elendil was already so far removed from Ar-Pharazôn, the last king of Numenor. That's yeah. The Numenorians did mess up a fair bit.
Well, I guess the point.
But I did want to touch on Rohan, because I think they're an interesting line. They descend from Anarion as well, quite amazingly, I think.
Yeah, they split off, don't they?
Yeah, they're not too far away from Anarion himself. I say not too far away. Low double digits.
I'm gonna find where so there's Eärnur, who's the last king of Gondor. Right, so he's on about the same level as Aragorn the First, but across.
Yeah.
And so the Rohirrim split off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 generations before that.
12. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but they then just sort of just go and do their own thing, and they're pretty happy. There's
they sort of stay really separate, don't they? Which is almost amazing.
Yeah.
Well, they marry into the stewards' lines, but that's a separate thing. But yeah, they keep relatively clean. Good on them.
Clean-ish. But no, you're right. They do. And no, they just sort of go and do their own thing until. Wait, hold on. Éomer marries Imrahil's daughter?
Daughter, I think, yeah.
And Éowyn marries Faramir, yes.
Yeah. And of course, their grandson is called Barahir, because they just have no original thought. It's just unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah, obviously the family trees kind of stop nearer that end, because there's not much to do. But then I did have a question for you.
Okay, because I have a question as well, but you can do your one first, because mine is typically me pulling my head out in rage.
Yeah, my question was, would you have made a case, if Aragorn doesn't have a claim to the throne of Gondor, could you have made a case that the throne should have passed to Finarfin himself? Or heck, even Finwë?
Could I have made a case? Absolutely, but I can make a case for anything. Is there a reasonable case to be made?
As in, if we do assume that Elros's claim to stuff was legitimate.
Let's assume, okay, so Elros is a legitimate king.
And his nearest surviving direct relative, I think, would be... Well, actually, is he related to Finarfin?
No, the throne...
Yes, he is, yeah.
If Elros's throne of Númenor is legitimate, and the thrones of Gondor and Arnor, which are successor states to Númenor, are also legitimate, then... And Aragorn has no claim, and there is no sort of claim in descent from Elros, then Elrond is king of Gondor. As Elrond's brother.
Sure. So, but if you can make a case for Elrond, you can make a case, and this is why it's so fucked up. Right? In family trees where forefathers outlive you, I think you can. I think you can in this situation. Yeah, but what if Elrond says, "I don't want to give it to my next of kin who is alive"? That might very well be Finwë.
It's Elrohir. Yeah. Elrond's eldest son.
No, but you're basing this on the way succession works in our world, where the people who, bring us into this world and raise us die eventually. In this case, they don't, because Finwë's still there.
But also, Finwë's High King of the Noldor. He doesn't need some shitty metal hat for Gondor.
He doesn't need it. He should have the first refusal.
No,
and ultimately what will happen is Manwë's herald will come along at one point and say, you know what, guys? Fuck all this shit. Manwë's decided to do something else.
Manwë is king of all under the sky. No, so my read of this is that it goes... If we accept Aragorn's claim, it goes to Aragorn. Aragorn has no cousins or anything like that. It's just a direct lineage. It's just a direct line all the way down from Isildur to Aragorn. Right, which is why does no one have siblings?
That's a very, very good question. Because that would have added too much diversity.
Why did all of the chieftains of the Dunedain only have a single son? That's insanity. Especially if you're living in the feckin' wilderness.
I think that literally is just to make the claim easy.
It is. It absolutely is.
Because can you imagine if this was some Game of Thrones-esque, stuff where there's bastard children?
Game of Thrones has the same problem. Game of Thrones has the same problem. The Stark family is meant to be 9,000 years old, and yet there is only the Starks and the Karstarks, who we know are a cadet branch. But why doesn't Rob have 1,000 cousins?
Yeah, because the survival rate's so low, I imagine.
No, but so to answer your question, I think...
It's not a question. I'm actually going to assert this, that the true heir to the thrones of Gondor and Arnor should have been Finarfin.
Okay, you're an idiot. That's not how inheritance works anywhere.
Yeah, because we don't have bloody immortal elves in our world, do we?
It's not how inheritance works even in Lord of the Rings.
I think if Finarfin rocked up and laid a claim to the kingship of Gondor, it'd be hard
but that's because he'd just kill everyone.
Well, there is that. He's
an elf who's got...
It's just weird, isn't it? It's like it's effectively like someone's great grandfather shows up and is like, you know what? Why don't I become king of this?
No, I don't dispute that it's weird, but if we assume, so the High King of the Noldor goes to the elf closest in descent, the male elf closest in linear descent from Finwë, right? Until Elrond doesn't take it. There is, if the throne of Gondor were to pass in the same way, it would go to the man closest in linear descent from Elros, which is Elrohir. Or is it Elrond and then Elrohir? I just don't see it going up the chain. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, yeah.
I can see why you're saying it. I can see why you're saying it, but
I guess, yeah, you'd have to remove Elrohir and Elladan from the equation, and arguably Elrond.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, then you are at Finarfin, so...
Then you're at Finarfin, yeah, because everyone else is dead.
Yeah, Elrohir and Elladan are really interesting characters as well. Just, who knows what they get up to.
They're just murdering orcs for a living.
And, I mean, also good on Elrond to have three kids. That's more than most.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think Finarfin could just lay claim to the Kingship of Gondor. Although, as you did accurately conclude last time, that Eldarion is just the most amazing king.
Yes.
Possibly, so...
Just very quickly, and I know we've rambled on for a very long time. Two last things to note. Firstly, Círdan. Is Círdan the oldest elf still alive? Well, no, because that'd be Ingwe, wouldn't it?
Is Círdan one of the firstborn? I never remember. I don't think
so.
He is. I think he's descended from one of them.
We don't know
actually
anything
find him on this tree.
He's next to Melian.
Ah, so he is. What's his supposed year of birth? Year of the trees.
He's born in the year of the years of the trees. Which is, I think,
Sindar are really hard to track, aren't they?
Yes, I think Thingol is also born in the years of the trees. Thingol we have
I mean, the firstborn are written down as that anyway, so...
Yeah.
They're all year of the trees, 1050, I think, is what they've put down for them, which is just a random number, I think. You're right.
That's just been plucked out of nowhere.
Círdan, yeah. I don't know, I'd have to go and check that. I don't think he's one of the originals.
Okay.
But he's definitely not far removed from them. He may not...
I mean,
Galadriel might be older, you know?
We know
it's hard to know.
We know he's not... He is older than Galadriel because he was part of the March... the March West. Because he was among those who...
Oh, because he stopped. Yeah, he stopped, you're right.
Searching for Thingol.
No, you're
so
right
he's at least that old. It was just an intro.
Right.
I don't have a point. It's just
he's certainly the oldest elf in Middle Earth. Well, actually, we don't know that either because there's probably Sindar left in random places.
That's true. We don't know.
Like Legolas's family, Thranduil, no idea.
It just stops at Orifer, who we know is a first age elf from Doriath, but they're all Sindar.
Yeah.
The other one that's wild. I don't know if you found it yet, because it's sort of hidden in its own little bit. But have you seen the family trees of the hobbits?
Yes, I had a quick look at them, but their names are just so ridiculous.
Their names are ridiculous. They're also...
where are they?
Potentially... They have too many kids. Samwise Gamgee and Rosie Cotton having 14 children.
Yeah, Sam was something.
Sam. But no.
But tell you about Sam, what I learned recently is that he actually made it to the West.
Yeah, he goes to the West at the very end of his days, doesn't he?
Yeah. Mental.
I just like it also that Sam changed his surname, so all his kids are called Gardner, even though he was like Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah, and
so now that's a shitty name. And his,
I think there's relevant. I think it's supposedly like a token of pride, almost, of like or because it's such a respected profession, right?
Yeah.
And so they named him Gardner because he's such a badass, and he is. Samwise Gamgee is an absolute badass.
Yeah, and he's also his daughter marries Pippin's son.
Yeah.
Who's called Faramir because. Yeah. Anyway,
I think the final thing is just what I thought was humorous. Is when you see well, I guess not really much of a family tree, but you see the Valar there, you see the Maiar, and then between the two, you just have Anomaly, Tom Bombadil, and Goldberry, which I think is just so funny.
Yes,
acknowledging that they exist, but no one knows why or who or what they are.
I wonder if there's enough material on Tom Bombadil to do an episode, because I think he's really
More than enough, but yeah, maybe we should consider one. Actually, I think that could be quite a fun one. Because I think I'm almost one of the few people who doesn't absolutely hate Tom Bombadil.
I don't. I think Tom Bombadil is great. I think he's absolutely necessary to the story.
At least once, yes.
At least once. But no, why don't you let us know if you'd be interested to hear an episode on Tom Bombadil? Give us a tweet.
Absolutely. And I think, as you said, we've rambled on for quite some time. Rambled on through the absolutely rambling family trees of the Tolkienarium. But on that note, I think I just want to say thanks for listening to this episode of Expertise is Overrated. No doubt we've said some things that were either objectively wrong or downright offensive. As ever, feel free to let us know, rate the podcast, and leave us a comment or drop us an email at expertiseisoverrated@gmail.com, tweet us at zeroexpertise, check out our website expertiseisoverrated.podbean.com, or come join us on our Discord server.
If you're lucky, we might just argue with you in one of our upcoming episodes, and if you're really lucky, we might call you an idiot. Now, in our next episode, get excited, we have another hot take. This time, Vib asserts that he will be proving that Lara Raith in the Dresden Files, the vampire, is a good person. Join us then for more absolute nonsense.